Welcome everyone to the Emergent Essence Dynamics webinar on December 1st. It is webinar number 19 and the theme is the Enneagram Simplified. So what I have to say is we use the Enneagram a little differently in Emergent Essence Dynamics. It's less of a personality typing system, even though it is used that way, but we use it more as 9 archetypal pathologies or 9 strategies to lead yourself into essence. So each of the 9 archetypes are seeking essence in a particular way. And that's what I'm going to be showing you today. What this does is it helps keep the Enneagram more dynamic. It has you less put yourself in a box. And what we believe here is that you're able to embrace all nine types. You may have certain favorites or defaults, but we are capable of embodying all 9, and all 9 show us different strengths and different aspects of essence that we ultimately would incorporate into ourselves. So the ultimate goal really is to incorporate all 9 types. All right. And our life circumstances, our paths, our personalities, and our identities will lead us down particular paths. We're not stuck on just one. And I want to be very, very, very clear about that, because there are some other interpretations of Enneagram out there that kind of put you in a box. And or people say, oh, that's my type, and they stay in that box. And that's not really realistic, because we are constantly borrowing from all 9. And when all 9 are mixing with each other and borrowing from each other, that's what creates rich dynamics. The usefulness of this is, yes, we can get to know ourselves better. We can also start to recognize motivations in other people, or what are they really going for? It's not just why are they behaving so badly or so goodly, in a way. So each of the 9 types will present particular strengths to you, and so we can learn all of those strengths. All right. If you have any questions or comments along the way, please feel free to interrupt me and stop me, because I do want to make this very relevant for what you're doing in your life and your work, or to clarify things that you maybe don't understand or that I'm not being clear with. So please feel free to interrupt. So what are we covering? I kind of said it, but we're discovering all 9 Enneagram types as seen through the lens of Emergent Essence Dynamics. All right. We're looking at how they function and why, and really how they each are a distinct pathway to access essence, or they're a pathway into our core essence. All right. So this is not about, again, I'm going to stress, this is not about a personality type, which feels static. This is about, I'll favor these kinds of behaviors or motivators in order to discover essence. All right. Or a certain aspect of essence. All right? And I'll go into that in more detail as we go through each type. So then, as we go through the whole Enneagram model, you're going to discover simple ways to recognize each type within yourself and others, and then how can you embody the strengths that each type offers. I'm going to pay more attention to the strengths rather than to the negative qualities or the vices. All right. There will be naturally lots of negative qualities, but I don't want to harp on that or focus on it, because then we're giving it too much focus and we'll tend to embody those negative qualities. They're there for a reason, all right? So one thing I'm going to show you in the next slide is what's the difference when we're driven by fear or driven by source, all right? Whether we're connected or disconnected. That changes the way these Ennea-Types will behave, all right? So also tips for expanding our own human range and breaking free of the personality type box. So rather than putting ourselves in a box, it's more of, oh, here's how I'm behaving in this moment. Here's how I'm behaving in this moment and in this moment. And we really do function like multiple personalities. And this is why I chose to incorporate the Enneagram into EED, into the courses and the trainings. Especially it's useful for conflict work as well. It's to realize that in each moment and in each different relationship, we are drawing from different aspects of ourselves. So it's as if we're drawing from multiple personalities. And we unify all of those different types of personality together in one cohesive whole, right? So again, this is why I say we're not just looking for one type, and I'm going to stress that again and again and again. Very briefly, so those of you attending live, I know you've already taken EED courses, but for those listening to the recording or watching on YouTube, they may not be familiar with what emergent essence dynamics is. So what it is really is a universal model that tracks the fundamental behaviors of humans and human transformation. So we're looking at patterns, dynamics and patterns, how these patterns fit together, how these patterns influence each other. We all are operating from patterns, and our relationships are operating from patterns. So we're playing out our dramas in order to learn lessons, basically. So once we discover the lessons that we need to learn and we incorporate those lessons, we no longer need to follow those patterns. We're going to find a new kind of pattern or arena to operate in. And that's how we evolve and change. So the art of transformation is really to look at how can we transmute our patterns into the most pristine, clean, and best possible versions of ourselves, right? So how do we discover patterns? It's through behavior. So emergent essence dynamics is all about behavior and where the behavior is coming from. That can be from pattern and then from essence. And all of these patterns are leading us into essence. So this is why we're looking at Enneagram. It's one way to look at how are we trying to access essence through patterns. So this is applicable to coaching, leadership, mediation, facilitation, healing, and more. And it's especially great for personal growth. And everything that we're doing is based on resilience and autonomy, reclaiming autonomy, restoring resilience within ourselves. It is not based upon fear and reactivity. If we try to build transformation from fear and reactivity, all we're doing is reinforcing fundamental patterns that will not change. As soon as we start connecting to source, which then relaxes us into a more resilient state, now we're able to become more fluid and more dynamic. And we can discover our patterns without being reactive or fearful or defensive. We can actually examine what are the patterns going for, what are the lessons we're trying to learn, and then we can incorporate them and the patterns will resolve themselves. So emergent essence dynamics takes a resilience-oriented approach towards transformation. And it is a behavioral approach towards transformation. So we're looking at relationship dynamics. What's the truthful action, behavior, and energy of the person in every moment? We're not listening to the words and the language because the language doesn't always match up with the behavior. Sometimes we're getting split signals. So we're looking at what do people do, not what they promise, so to speak. So it's anti-politics. Put the resilience and the dynamics together, then we can look at the fractal cycles. These are the patterns, the natural patterns of change, growth, the creative process. So, and fractal means we're going to have core patterns that are operating on many levels, from the smallest to the largest. All right. And basically, in every moment, we are focusing on sort of one set of patterns, and it's going to show up everywhere until we've learned that lesson. And then we'll move on to the next set of patterns and the next set of patterns. So there's a pattern happening within, in my own inner struggles, then that's going to show up in my own external conflicts. It's going to show up in the way I'm interacting with the world, and the world is interacting with me. We're replaying all these stories and dramas, not to suffer. It is to pay attention to the lessons being offered. This is the approach that EED takes. It's to look at what are the lessons being offered. Many times, if we're coming from fear, emptiness, or disconnect, we're going to think we're always under attack. And we'll feel victimized, and then we'll just start dissociating from everything around us and pushing everything away, and we're never going to hear the lessons that are available. When we build resilience, then we're able to relax, open, expand, not feel so threatened, and then start paying attention and incorporating and listening. That is the importance of the resilience. Any comments or questions here? I'm explaining it in a kind of a new way than I have in previous webinars. All good? Okay, thumbs up, let's go. So essence, let me explain, what do we mean by essence or source? Think of the part of yourself that is aware of yourself that feels most permanent and timeless. This is more your core essence. This is a level well beyond identity. It does not depend on anything. It is self-reliant, self-sufficient. It is the part of you that lives on and lives through, so to speak. All right. You can call it your soul. You can call it your divine spark. Many people call it many different things, but it's that sense of self that nobody can touch or take away with, and you don't need to defend it. It's just there. It's constant. All right. So this is our essence. It is permanent, timeless, self-perpetuating, self-generating. It is unconditional, that unconditional aspect of ourselves. Now, we don't live in the world of essence. We live in a timeline. Now, so you could think essence, it's whole, it's complete, it's infinite awareness, it's all potential. But when we live in this world, this three-dimensional world where there's a past, present, and a future, that ends up being linear. So we cannot express essence all at once. It fractures and splits into many different qualities and aspects, just like white light splits into a spectrum of colors. All right. So this is where the Enneagram is coming from, because the Enneagram is expressing what are those spectrums of colors. What's that spectrum of color? What are all those various shades of essence? All right. Now, when we are born, we become individuated. All right. If you think of the baby in the womb, it's all complete, whole, it's taken care of. It doesn't even need to breathe. It doesn't need to feed. It doesn't need to move or do anything. It's just floating in this fluid, and it's very comfortable, warm. That's a great metaphor for being in the world of essence. But then when it is born, it is separated from that womb, separated from the mother, and now it's on its own. Okay, that can be shocking and traumatizing. All right, but it's also the nature of life. This is how essence can expand itself or express itself. It needs to fragment in order to come into relationship with itself. I use the metaphor of a shattered mirror. If all essence was just one big, long, huge mirror, it couldn't function as a mirror because it has nothing to reflect.
What is a mirror?
Mirror,
I don't
Spiegel.
know the word. A mirror.
Spiegel.
Okay.
Yeah, in German it's a Spiegel,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
A mirror. So if you have one endless mirror in a dimension where it can't turn upon itself, it can't be a mirror. And that's basically the stuff of essence, all right? So what happens is, in order for it to express itself, it needs to relate to itself. Therefore, it needs to shatter itself or fragment. Then it can become all these various colors that can mix and blend. All right. So the mirror now can face itself and express and be in relation. What that's going to create, though, is also a world of duality or opposites, because one splits into two and two comes into relationship. All right. So this is where we get this split from essence. We become individuated. We might forget that we are made of the substance of a mirror, and we may focus on that I am a fragment that's shattered or split off of something. And I might feel very ripped off, very resentful of that, right? That's where the ego then can start to try and take control. So essence then will split, let's say, and will become two types of self. We can become the resilient self, which still maintains a connection to essence and source. It's like the baby with the umbilical cord that has not been cut. That's a metaphor, right? where it can still draw from source, or the pathetic self, or the egoic self, or the persona, the identity self, which is disconnected from essence, and therefore it feels like it's left to its own devices. It needs to fend for itself. All right. So what it's trying to do, it feels ripped off from essence, and it's trying to come back to essence, but not from the same way it came. Okay, because it feels behind it or underneath its own foundation, it feels this gap. All right. Now, both are oriented towards action because it's a self. It's meaning it wants to self-express. But they're going to express for two different reasons. Now, the pathetic self is driven by this gap or that disconnect. It feels like it is an individual separate from everything, whereas the resilient self is an individual that is connected to everything. All right.
So it feels true as if pathetic self is trying to compensate something. That's the
Exactly.
word that kind of popped up in my head.
Yes, it's always trying to compensate. It's trying to either fill that gap or cover that gap up, pretend it's not there. And at the same time, it's always asking itself, am I okay? Am I okay? It's like it's feeling behind. It's like, is that gap still there? Am I okay? Am I okay? Is that gap trying to eat me up? Because what this gap represents is annihilation, death, emptiness, nothingness, non-existence, okay? What it doesn't realize is that behind that gap is essence. It's the very thing it seeks. But it finds that gap so traumatizing and fearful, it will never go back, all right? So it's always moving forward, trying to reconnect to essence. So it's always looking for a source, an external source. Because the foundation to the pathetic self is a gap or emptiness, it feels it possesses no resources, no creativity, nothing. Therefore, it must fill itself up with a source of creativity, a source of knowledge, wisdom, etc. All right. This is why, and in my other webinars, when I talk about manipulation, as long as I aggravate that gap, that fear gap in somebody, I can have control over them because they're going to look to me either as the source or as the devil to run away from. I'm going to either represent that gap or the source. All right. That's how I can manipulate somebody. And then I can just get them ping-ponging between the two places. All right. So I've got them captive. So how do we remedy this? We need to move from the pathetic self to the resilient self, where we reconnect with essence, plug it in, and secure that energy, that it is a two-way street back and forth from self to essence. All right. That is how we calm ourselves down. This is how we start to dispel the fears. The fears aren't necessarily going to go away, but they're not going to take over. All right. And then we can take action from a more creative place as opposed to a reactive place. All right. So the resilient self is saying, I am okay, and therefore it's able to thrive. The pathetic self is constantly asking, am I okay? Am I okay? Am I okay? It's just trying to keep its head above water. So it's in this survival mode. Am I alive? Am I alive? Am I alive? All right. Resilient self says, I'm alive. And if I'm under threat, I'll find a way to get around that or work with it. It's not bothered. All right. Because it knows it's connected to permanence. Is that making sense? Okay. Why am I spending so long on this? Because the Enneagram is describing 9 archetypal pathetic selves. Okay. And 9 ways to reconnect with source. Okay. Now, just one further thing, the pathetic self is driven by fear and disconnect. It is seeking power through validation or control because it feels powerless. So validation means, do I exist? So then it needs outside validation to say, yes, you exist.
Troy,
Then
what about the kind of the search for love? Because I recall in the
that's
context,
validation. Yeah.
yes, but I thought that it's like power or love. So that's the two.
Well, love can mix with validation and control. So control is answering the question, how do I make sure I exist?
Yeah.
Okay. If I have validation, oh, you love me, therefore I exist. Well, how do I make sure you're going to love me? I might want to control you or let you control me so I can make sure I keep getting that validation. You see, the two are going to work together. Okay. And then underneath that is this fear. What if I lose that validation? What if I lose that control? I will cease to exist. I won't be here anymore. Okay, so you've got fear, validation, control, three main things. Okay, and the validation and control, it's really two. Both are driven by fear. Where's the fear coming from? Disconnect. Why is that all happening? Because of the act of separation. I know that sounds really, really, really comic book simple, but it actually, I think it is that simple. Then we can get all kinds of rich variations on that when we get clever about it, okay? What do we do in EED? We focus on the resilience first so we can get them into this okay place, reconnect them to essence, and then see what is the pathetic self really trying to accomplish so that we get the two actually working together. But if we don't get into a resilient state, we'll never understand the pathetic self because it's just going to run wild and run rampant in a constant mode of reactivity, okay? So Enneagram helps us, understand where the pathetic self is coming from, why it's driving itself in this way, how then to spark up the resilience and have it connect back to essence. And one thing we teach in module 2 is we can go the other way. We can take the pathetic self and take it directly across that gap back into essence. So it can reconnect itself.
Is this the peeling stuff?
That's the peeling process. Yeah, it's a peeling process. It actually comes from a way to integrate various personalities, whether that's from a dissociative identity disorder or from what used to be called multiple personality disorder, but it's a way of reintegrating the selves after trauma, after healing trauma. And that's what I based it upon. Because I feel like we're all operating from multiple selves, depending on the moment, right? It's just that those that do not have the dissociative identity disorder, there's not these barriers and walls between the various selves. All our selves are mostly conscious of each other. And we think it's just one self. We don't realize we're switching gears a lot of times. Now, let's look at the Enneagram. So 9 different paths, all right? And they are grouped into threes. So you have types 8, 9, and 1 grouped together. These are body-oriented types. I'll explain that in a moment. You have 2, 3, and 4. These are heart-oriented types. And you have 5, 6, and 7. These are head-oriented types. So one easy way to think of Enneagram is, where is the behavior coming from? Is it driven by the head, driven by the heart, or driven by the body, or let's call it the gut, all right? All right, so I'm gonna flash to the next slide so that gives you an idea of what I mean. When we're coming from the head, this is all about self-preservation. We're going to use our intellect, our perceptions, etc., to seek out safety and avoid danger. All right. So this is very fear-driven. I'd say all the types are fear-driven, or rather disconnect-driven, but the head is in particular controlled by fear, let's say, or the fear is entering through the head. What if, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, where do I go? Where do I go next? I've got to figure this out. So if we look at types 5, 6, and 7, they had 3 distinct ways of dealing with using their fear to navigate danger. So the observer is going to first observe the territory and everything around it and say, where might the danger be? And it's going to analyze everything with as little energy as possible, like to say, what's the game being played? Let me learn the rules of the game before I play the game. So observers get accused a lot of being emotionally deplete or way too intellectual. Okay, it's because they're trying to conserve all resources and energy because they believe there's a scarcity of energy here. I don't want to expend too much effort or energy because I want to make sure I'm safe and I want to make sure that I can last through this game. So I want to first observe the game with as little energy as possible. Then I want to play the game with as little energy as possible so I can just survive it and make it through. All right. This is why observers are accused of being sometimes robotic or apathetic. And when we look at what's the essential quality it's seeking, this will explain why is it trying to conserve so much energy and resources. All right? But it's coming from a belief that resources are scarce. Okay, this is why it observes. Loyal skeptic is using fear and danger in terms of authority. Who can I trust? Who is safe? Who is not safe? And if it finds a safe person it can trust, it's going to be very loyal to them and stick by them. But then they might start to think, is it really safe to be with this person? And they'll reject them and push them away and say, actually, I should be the authority here. But then they think, but can I trust myself? I don't know if I'm safe with myself. I need to find somebody else. So they have a bit of a schizophrenic polarity between who's the authority, someone else or myself, someone else or myself. So they'll be and they're going to ping pong between their loyalties. This is why they're called the loyal skeptic, because they'll cling to what's safe, but then they'll also be skeptical of what's safe. All right. The epicure is just avoiding all negativity. So there's a false positivity about the epicure. It's seeking safety by completely avoiding negativity. So therefore,
Troy, how do you translate that? Can you explain epicure?
Yes, the epicure is the best. It's like they're tasting everything in the buffet.
Ah, okay.
A food glutton. Okay, they're like a food glutton. Now, it's a great metaphor because they're seeing this buffet of all these wonderful treats and foods that they can eat, right? And they're just tasting a little bit of each one. They want to have a full range of experience of everything, but they don't want to commit to anything. Why? Because with commitment might come challenge, which means that might be a negative experience. So they just want a little bit of this and then a little bit of that. It's like they're on a constant honeymoon. So they might appear like an idealist. They're always very positive, putting a positive spin on things, and there's really nothing negative. And if there is something negative, they run away. They're on a constant honeymoon. If you think of in a professional environment, they're always in a startup phase. Oh, I've got this new idea, I'm starting up, and then, oh, well, I'm no longer working on that idea. I found a new idea, and this one's even better, and I'm working on this one. So they're constantly in a honeymoon phase. They can even do this with relationships. There's a reason they're doing this. They're never actually tasting the food they taste because it's all an intellectual experience. So they're not completely processing. They're trying to gain the knowledge and wisdom of everything, but they're actually not incorporating it because that might mean there's going to be some negativity involved. So there's a superficiality to it. Any questions or comments there on what I'm saying about these three types? How they're each seeking safety in a different way. Okay. Does that sound clear, and does that bring up any? Also, where do you do this? This is where you start to think like, It doesn't mean you do it all the time, but when are those moments when you do this? When you're like, I'm not going to play just yet. I'd like to just observe and see what's happening before I really get involved. Or who can I trust? Can I trust them or myself? Oh, I trust them. Oh, no, I can't trust them. Oh, I trust myself. Oh, no, I can't trust myself. Or, oh, look at these wonderful new things I can try. And then when it gets really hard, it's like, I'd like to look for something else. Right. So those are some simplified aspects of these three types. Again, it's all a head-oriented experience. It's about self-preservation. It's about fearing getting it wrong, just fearing the annihilation. There's many fears here. Okay. Well, I lost what I was going to say after that. But self-preservation is fear. And was there something else there? No, yeah, staying away from danger. But yes, it's using your perceptions, your intellect, your smarts, your intelligence, all of this. That is how you're preserving yourself. It's through your smarts, your cleverness, your intellectual capacity. Okay.
To me, it also feels like as if there is also an inner critic very involved here.
Absolutely.
Triggers and, you know.
Yes. It might be an inner critic. Like with the loyal skeptic, it's an inner critic of, oh, are they really telling the truth? Or are you really capable? Right? It might be a navigator, like with the observer. Is that really safe? Can you really go there? Is that the best place to be? Okay. Or with the epicure, it could say, what's the next thing? Maybe that one's boring. Or let's look for the most positive, exciting experience here because we'll be safest there. Okay. Might look like that. So it's not always an inner critic, but yes, it is all these thoughts. Okay. Heart. So this is the way we're creating relationship. All right. The heart-based. By the way, where am I at this time? Okay. Okay. So this is where we're seeking connection. This is where we're seeking the validation, the connection. We're going to use the emotional energy. But when it's a pathetic self, remember, driven by the emptiness, that emptiness is going to look like need. I need you to acknowledge me. I need you to connect with me. I need you to recognize me because then I know I exist. That's the validation. Now that can be interpreted into, I need you to love me. I need you to like me. All right. There's nothing worse than sending out a post that you're so proud of on Instagram or social media, and then nobody is responding to it. And how does that feel? I'm getting no likes. So it's feeding this type. So now what these types do is this will be the giver, the performer, the romantic. So they have three ways of winning recognition, love, or validation, okay? Three ways to gain that, right? The giver is, or another word for it is the helper. So it's going to create the need so that you need them, all right? I'm going to find what you need so I can provide. And the reward I get is that you like me for that. And you thank me and you love me. And then I feel needed. And when I feel needed and I can give and give and give and give and get those thank yous, then I know I'm alive and I know I'm okay. And I know I'm a good person. And I know I'm here and I get that validation. Okay. The giver, the helper is notorious for creating codependent relationships. They're creating dependencies. Now there's a negative aspect to it. Suddenly the giver might feel like I'm not getting enough validation from you. I've been giving, and I'm not getting enough recognition from you. Therefore, I resent you. I've wasted so much time on you, right? Or I'm giving so much and now you're taking from me. I'm getting nothing in return. You're sucking the life out of me. I need my independence. But then if I have my independence, then I might not get my validation from you. So I'm back in there to create more need. So that's the codependence, all right, that the giver and the helper can create. The performer is going to win the recognition through what they accomplish, what they do. So the giver is winning the love and the recognition through what they can provide. Okay. The performer is what I do. So they're going to be very competitive. They're going to be all about image, right? Because like, what do you think of me? What do I present to you? So these people are very good in public relations. They can always do a nice spin so that they look the best. They are the best. They don't want to be the best because of quality. They want to be the best because they are number one. When I'm number one, it's not because of quality. I'm number one because I'm most loved, most admired, most famous, most recognized. I'm getting the most validation through what I do. All right, so they're competitive. They want to win the awards, right? They'll stay up all night to work on the project to make it the best project possible, again, to get the accolades, to get the recognition. It's not about the quality, all right? A romantic is going to win validation by being the most special person in the world. And one way that makes them so special is their ability to hold pain, darkness, and suffering. Because none of these other types are doing that. They're all these other types are throwing off the pain and it's saying, give me the pain. Look at me. Look at how I can take all the pain. And they become very dramatic and look how special I am. So they win love and recognition by being incredibly unique and poetic and dark and the suffering and the pain, because they eat it up. They love it. They love it. Look how I can take in this pain. Don't you love me for that? All right. What they also do is they love to make everything so melodramatic, and they love to spend lots of energy to make it big and grand. So this is why you'll see no line between the observer and the romantic. They cannot get along. Remember I said the observer is trying to conserve energy. The romantic is expending energy completely. A romantic is exhausting for an observer. Okay. All right, so 3 different ways to win validation. They're creating relationship, all right? Romantic wants to be the most unique and special person in the world, and that's why you love them, and they will work so hard to be that unique and special. They will do anything for that. The performer is going to work hard to accomplish the best thing, to be the best, so that you think they're the best, so that you admire them. All right, and you give them all that love and recognition. The giver is going to find out what you need, what do you need, what do you need, and they will provide, and they will give it, and they will give it, and they will give it without needing a thank you. That is not true. They want that thank you and that recognition, right? They'll pretend to be selfless, right? Questions, comments there? How you guys doing with that? All right, then let's look at the one last thing, the body here. Where am I here? So we have the head, the heart. Now, if we're body oriented, the key thing here is it's driven by our more base emotions. This has to do with territory, because this takes our gut, our groin, our legs, right? This is very, very, very animalistic, very tribal, all right, where we have lots of movement, run. This is also about community, how we are in groups, all right? And so these 3 types that are body-oriented, they're driven by how to manage territory, manage people, manage groups, all right? And one way we manage is through anger. those primal impulses. What is what is their relationship to anger, and how do they use it? This is one very good way to tell if you've got body types going on. So look into what's happening down in the stomach and the groin. Now, there's a difference between the groin and the stomach, so let's just focus on the gut here. That's more our anger center. It's also our power center. This is what allows us to move. It's what moves us forward. So it's also control, right? When we have control over others, we're using power. We're coming from that gut center, all right? That's not always a bad thing, all right? Now, I've got other webinars where we're looking at how, do the heart and the body compete with each other, and they don't get along, and you have this struggle between, do I exercise power, or do I come from love? And those two don't seem to mix well. But let's look at these body types. What is each of these Ennea-Types' relationship to anger and action? All right. So here we've got the perfectionist, the mediator, and the protector. Now, the protector is easiest to look at because the protector actually has a very good relationship with anger and control, because they use their anger and they exercise control. They're considered a bully most times. When they move into their more negative aspects, they will be a tyrant and a bully. But what they're really trying to do is they're trying to protect the weak. They will not let themselves be vulnerable, and they will not allow someone who is vulnerable to be attacked or destroyed. They are always protecting the weak and the underdog, because they feel they have the power to be able to fight the fight, all right? They're not afraid to fight the fight. But as soon as they move into vulnerability, all that power goes away and they feel helpless, and they will not allow themselves to be or feel helpless. This is why they are obsessed with protecting the helpless. Does that make sense? And they're very angry about that. They're very angry. It's all about justice, 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 fairness. It's got to be fair and just. Do not take advantage of the weak. Is that making sense? They're very angry about that. Now, the mediator is trying to balance everything, balance anger. They don't want to rock the boat. They're trying to keep everything calm and cool. There is no real room or place for anger because it's going to destroy everything. We don't want everything in upheaval. We want everything very balanced. Now, this has a strange effect, that the mediators tend to be all very zen, very calm, and sometimes sleepy. They are the closest to what essence might be like, because essence basically is all potential. So therefore, everything is okay. And we don't have to do anything at essence, because at the level of essence, there's nothing to do, nothing to be, nowhere to go. It's the state before action or creation, right? Mediators tend to imitate that. What that also means is, because they will not rock the boat, they will not take on a strong point of view. Because as soon as they take on a strong point of view, they're choosing a side that's going to take things out of balance. The other thing is, they have this incredible compassion, an ability to understand everything and everyone, so they can take on all sides. They're like a chameleon. What that means then is they're the one type that has no identity, because they can take on every identity. Is that kind of making sense? This is why they're the most closest to essence. That'll make sense when I show you the essential qualities as well. They're the closest to essence because they have that kind of a sleepy zen, I'm okay quality. They don't take on a particular identity, and they're able to morph into every identity as well. So they're imitating all potential. Does that make sense? That makes them good mediators. They're go-betweens. They're going to try and balance, create peace and harmony in everything. But why? Because they don't want anger to erupt. Why? It's going to take things out of balance. So they want everything middle of the road.
You just answered my question.
Which was what? What was the original question then?
How they are driven by anger. Actually, they are by
They're trying to, they're trying to balance it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Not necessarily suppress it or push it down, because then that means it's going to erupt back.
Absolutely.
And they're not trying to erase it, but they're just trying to diffuse it. Okay. And it's not like the epicure who's trying to avoid the negativity. Okay. The epicure is just saying it's not even there. Okay. And it's not even about anger for the epicure, it's just about negativity. All right. I thrive off positivity, and therefore if it's negative, I cannot thrive. Therefore that's dangerous. That's the epicure. Okay. Mediator is just keep things all nice and calm and cool and collected, and let's have a nice quiet conversation in a nice safe space. Okay, so they don't want things to get too emotional, because that means it's going to get out of balance. Does that make sense? Okay. Perfectionist is different. Perfectionist is trying to actually eliminate anger. Anger doesn't belong. They're trying to eradicate it. Why? Because anger is a low form of existence. And what the perfectionist is doing is it wants to aspire to the highest form possible of existence. Meaning, so it would like to cut anger off. It would like to cut off its whole lower half of the body, the perfectionist would. Because everything below here is going to be debased. It's animalistic, and I'm better than that. So the protector is managing, separating the weak from the strong. It's managing community in that way. The mediator is managing the community by balancing everyone and making sure everyone is in balance and harmony. And then the perfectionist is managing the morals of the community, trying to raise everyone up to the higher standard so they do not operate on a low level. So the perfectionist is in constant judgment of everything. What's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, what can be better. And so what's very ironic is the perfectionist is always operating from a low level of resentment. The world is not perfect enough. Okay. There's still dirtiness here. There's still lowness here. There's still debaseness here. There's still lust. The problem is, though, the perfectionist can also lapse into indulging in its lower nature, because life wants to balance everything. So it's trying to keep its head well above, and then it'll have a weak moment and it'll indulge. Whoosh. Yeah. And then it'll come back, and then it's going to judge itself and punish itself and try to cut out those parts of itself. So it can operate on extremes, and it's addictive. It has addictive behaviors in that sense. Okay. So it's always going to be on these extremes. So if you think a perfectionist is judgmental on you, well, how do you think it is to live inside the head of a perfectionist, or the body of a perfectionist?
Thank you, Troy, for mentioning that.
Well, okay, why?
I think I know someone.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, the creator of EED is a perfectionist. So definitely.
I didn't have you in mind, but maybe there is.
So they're driven by anger, meaning they're trying to eradicate it or erase it or eliminate it and move everything to a higher standard. Right. So if we look again at, remember, the performer would stay up all night to make it the best project possible, the best presentation possible. They're doing that for the accolades, for the reward, for the recognition. The perfectionist is doing it so that it truly is the best of the best of the best, so they can model a high standard for everyone and everyone else. And
also for the control part, right? They can see that too in the perfectionist much more than the performer kind of.
That's right. So it's controlling quality.
Yeah.
Because if I control quality, everyone becomes superior, then we are not in this low level darkness, and we'll lose our pristineness. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that making sense?
Yes.
Well, there's your 9 types on the pathologies and what's driving them. Do you have any comments or questions here? And then I want to just briefly then show you the essence, the matching essential qualities, and then we can wrap it up. But how does this help simplify recognizing the 9 types? And do you feel or see or hear these types within yourselves in different moments?
Definitely. I mean, it brings a lot of light in, somehow I feel it takes a lot of, stress from my shoulder. Just to look on this map and to understand, the tendencies.
Well, what is the relief, and what is that relief bringing you or giving you?
Mainly that these tendencies are kind of normal and natural, in the universe. I mean,
normal and natural, particularly when we are aggravated by that gap.
Yeah. Or at least common, something common.
Yes.
In a way. And from this perspective, it means that probably in any of us there is some of them or a lot of them, those fragments. And but as a question, I was wondering what arrows are.
That's exactly where I was moving here now. I was looking at those and I said, I haven't talked about the arrows yet. Now, what will happen is, of course, you can go to an Enneagram expert or take an Enneagram course or go get yourself typed or whatever. Fine, but I'm saying don't lock yourself into that, because as I said before, we exhibit aspects of all these 9. Now, in my lifetime, I have now touched upon all 9 in major ways. All right, I went through various phases. Look at yourself in your early 20s. There might be your default or main type that you've developed into. Don't look at your teens, because what you're doing is your teens are actually experimenting with all of these types, many of them, okay? Then when you hit your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, every decade, as you grow and evolve, you might start migrating into other types or borrowing more and more from other types or starting to develop other types as well. And you still may have a lifelong type. Now, what it really means is it's not that you're this one type. It means you're seeking a particular essential quality, meaning you're trying to master a particular life lesson. When you're mastering that particular lesson, you're able to then incorporate that particular essential quality. What I will say, and I'll show you essential qualities next year. What I will say is each type can experience all the essential qualities except the one they seek. That'll be the last one that they'll experience, because it's the one they're most blind to. Remember that gap?
Yeah.
That essential quality they seek is the one right behind that gap, and they're looking for it everywhere else but behind them. This is why they need to incorporate their lessons. They've attached a certain taboo lesson in that gap that they won't touch. And this is why in our module 2 work, we turn them around, have them go through that gap, through that peeling process, so that they're building resilience as they go through that gap. Then they can finally land in the essence and realize the very thing they were trying to avoid was the very thing that they were seeking. In fact, there's an irony. It's almost like Wizard of Oz. Dorothy always had the ruby red slippers on the whole time. She could have gone home at any time, but she needed to go through the entire journey to appreciate home. So with these essential qualities, which I'm coming to next, the very thing they seek is the very thing they possessed, and it's the very thing that gave them strength, but it's also the very thing that felt like their enemy. And this will make sense in a moment when I come to it. So arrows. Let's look at perfectionist. A perfectionist has an arrow pointing to the romantic. So remember, the romantic needs to be very unique, very special, okay? When the perfectionist gets very stressed, even driven more by fear and emptiness, it's going to start borrowing from the romantic. So not only do things need to be perfect, but they need to be uniquely special and perfect. All right? Ultra perfect. Okay? When the perfectionist is getting relaxed, it will start to borrow from the epicure or relax back into the epicure, meaning, okay, well, maybe this is okay and that's okay. I can start exploring other things and other avenues. I don't have to keep perfecting this one thing. I can start expanding my range and my tastes. All right, so it'll leave things well enough alone that it can open itself up to new things, new experiences. All right, so you have your stress type and your security type, and it'll borrow. Okay, then you have wing types where it's neighbors. So the perfectionist can borrow from the giver. It can also borrow from the mediator. Now, as I said, don't make any hard and fast rules on that. All right, because what I have found through the relationship dynamics work that we do in Emergent in EED is we'll operate from head, heart, body, and other centers. So in fact, we are accessing all 9 types. In other webinars, I talk about how we operate in polarity, where we actually have almost like 2 types at once competing. They are not necessarily related as according to the Enneagram map, because we might have 2 competing body centers. And that's why we have 2 different kinds of types. But notice that like the perfectionist will have body type, heart type, head type. But notice something like the observer borrows or stresses into another head type and relaxes into a body type. It doesn't have a relationship type. Okay.
To me, that was also eye-opening, Troy, because I had a participant in a recent workshop who was very much in the observation kind of role, and the pattern that you've just described makes full sense. So especially I had the impression that also the heart connection there for this person was super difficult.
So the more we accuse them of not having a heart, the more we're actually going to aggravate them or stress them into their head. And they can be angry, but they're going to move that anger back up to their head. All right. If you relax them, they're able to drop down into their belly. And then they might be able to move from belly up to heart. Wow. Okay. They may feel that the heart is way too exhausting because people will steal their energy through relationship.
Yeah.
What makes you smile there, Alina?
I am the observer.
You are.
Yes. So think about this, that these head types might feel that emotional types like giver, performer, romantic are more like vampires.
I agree.
They're dangerous, okay? They may feel more secure with body types because at least it provides security, okay?
Wow.
Bodies provide foundation.
It makes full sense because my co-coach, my partner, I think she's more like a body type of thing. So she could connect better, and then the other, and then kind of bridge to me.
The heart types are very good with vulnerability. And for the body type and the head type, that's dangerous.
I mean, that's fully me. I think I'm more in the heart types.
Yeah. As I've outlined in other webinars, you're going to get 2 centers teaming up against another. So, and usually the head is like the middle sibling cup between the heart and the body. So think of it, that the head doesn't know who to be loyal to. It can be convinced by the heart that it's better, or it can be convinced by the body that it's better, or the gut. Okay, you're going to see the head caught between, and it's going to be asked to choose sides. And again, it's about self-preservation. So the heart or the gut could start activating the loyal skeptic in the brain and say, no, 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 let me be the authority. Like, let me take control here. No, 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 you might lose all your friends. Let me take control and be open and vulnerable with everyone so we're loved, and that will keep us safe. No, everyone will take advantage of you. They're going to steal all your energy. They're going to make you work too hard. You got to create boundaries, cut them off. Don't be weak. Don't be vulnerable. Don't be stupid. Right? So do you see how the brain doesn't know where to go? So you're seeing how these three can work together. This is why I'm also saying, don't make hard and fast rules about these arrows either. I've found, just let the body centers guide you rather than the arrows. Also, one thing to remember for advanced Enneagram work: who am I when I'm alone? Who am I when I'm in relationship with somebody? Who am I when I'm in a group? I may not be using my main default type all the time.
Wow.
Okay, so when I'm alone, I might be very much a perfectionist, but when I'm in relationship, I might be a giver. And when I'm in a group, I might be a mediator. This is more true to how I am in my life, all right? And then I'll easily, I now easily can get into the protector role. I never was before. I used to be a lot, in groups, I used to be much more of an observer. Then I became more like a mediator, and in more conflict and crisis, I'll become, or if my morals or values get threatened, I'll become a protector, right? If I'm getting stressed. I'm just talking about myself personally, right? When I was younger, I used to be very much a performer and a romantic. Then I started to let both of those go, and I'm even beginning to let the giver go, right? But as I let the giver go, I'm becoming more the loyal skeptic. And even withdrawing into observer, all right? When I was younger, I used to be very much an epicure. So it depends. Are you in a group? Are you in relationship with somebody? Are you with yourself? You need to look at that as well to consider. All right. Now, let's move on to these essential qualities because they're very important into where does this all lead? All right. So the main essential quality, or let's call it essential quality number 10, is peace. Unconditional peace. Think of this as the white light of peace. I know I made it look green here, but there's a rhyme and a reason for that. You can call it, it's very healing, all right? But also because you can't see white on a white background. So I'm choosing green because it encompasses, what it does is it encompasses all colors, all right? So that's our embodied self. Ideally, when we incorporate all essential qualities into ourselves, we are at peace with ourselves and at peace with the world. And that does not mean we're like a mediator. It means we have access to everything and anyone, and we are not restricted. Nothing is taboo. Therefore, I'm okay to rock the boat because I can counterbalance the boat. I have everything at my disposal, all right? That's when we're embodying the essential quality of peace. That's also one of the first ones we hit, all right? Now, the first, remember, if this is, let's say, essence, the closest to essence is mediator, right? Number 9. Now, the quality that it seeks is love. You might think, oh, no, wouldn't it seek peace? No, it's using peace, but it really lacks love because, well, love could be turbulent. Love could rock the boat. All right. So this is partly why they're so sleepy. They're trying to imitate peace. They're avoiding love, and they're going to experience everything else and get a taste of everything else. But with love, they suddenly explode with color and have a strong point of view suddenly. And that they're very, 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 very fearful of. So in a way, it doesn't mean that mediators don't experience love, but they may experience a dry version of it, or they may restrict themselves or not feel it completely, because if they feel it completely, they might get colorful and dramatic. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So they seek the love. The perfectionist is so disembodied from bliss, because if they'd experienced bliss and joy, everything actually would be perfect as it is. And the main lesson a perfectionist needs to learn is acceptance, right? The main lesson that a protector is, this is the protector, is vulnerability. But the essential quality of invulnerable vulnerability means I'm open, I cannot be harmed, I'm permanent. Therefore, I can afford to be completely open. And that is a very strange experience for a protector, because it's a paradox. But that actually is essential strength. Another word for that is strength. So you have strength, bliss, and love. These are what we'll call divine experience. This is what we can experience in our physical bodies, all right? The rest of the essential qualities kind of go beyond body. They're a bit more transpersonal. So we'll experience an essential quality of peace. Another one might be limitless creativity, meaning, oh my God, everything is possible. I can do everything. That's like in coaching, when the client suddenly gets really inspired and excited, they'll start feeling this limitless creativity. This is what we call divine awareness. It's a head experience, or beyond head, all right? So you have limitless creativity, limitless potential, and limitless wisdom. The epicure is trying to taste the buffet because it's trying to gain knowledge of everything. It's trying to gain experience and knowledge of everything. If it already possesses the wisdom, it's not going to be so obsessed about tasting everything in the buffet. And then it can actually savor and enjoy the buffet, because it's not running away from negative experience, because it possesses wisdom to be able to embrace both positive, negative, and in its wisdom, it knows there's no such thing as positive, negative. It's not split. It's essential. Epicure is constantly splitting experience. With the observer, there is limitless potential, therefore there is no such thing as scarcity. There is abundance in everything. Therefore, it can calm itself down, right? And with the 6, there's limitless creativity, so authority is not even a question. It doesn't matter who you partner with or cling to or depend upon, yourself or others, there's always going to be creativity in the moment. You can always create, so you're never under threat. Does that make sense? So 6 is the loyal skeptic. The observer, the last place it looks is limitless potential. The last place an epicure looks is limitless wisdom. It's seeking it, but it doesn't believe it possesses it. Does this make sense? This is divine awareness. Now I'll make a note, because there might be some Enneagramists watching this and saying, no, I don't agree. Because why am I grouping these in triangles? And you'll see the next triangle. It's because actually a type is going to be migrating through a few of these essential qualities, lumping them together, but there is actually, we can pinpoint it on one main thing, but that doesn't mean it's always that main thing. What I'm pointing to here is this is probably the last essential quality it will embrace. The last essential quality a perfectionist will embrace is bliss. It's got to learn all of its lessons before it can come to unconditional acceptance. When it comes to unconditional acceptance, it now lands in bliss. Okay, that's what I mean. All right. For example, with the heart-based, they're again relationship-based, but a divine relationship would be unity, or all being, omnipresence, or all feeling, omnisentience. All right. So for example, the number 4, the romantic, feels a lot, but it doesn't feel every one, because it's got this narcissism. Feel me, feel me. Do you see what I'm doing? Do you see how I'm feeling? Do you see and I'm special, I'm special, I'm special. Otherwise, if you don't look at me, if I don't feel all of these things, if I don't take everything into myself, I won't be special, I won't be loved. It doesn't understand or realize that actually it can feel the entire world, and the whole world can feel it. It's this omnisentience, interconnection. That's another way of thinking of all feeling, interconnection. All being is I am everything. I can migrate around and be everything. So I can be you, you can be me. Therefore, I can just love you without creating any kind of need, problem, or reason for you to love me. I just love you, you love me. I can trust that. That's something a 2 will never understand, the giver. They just can't be loved for being loved, for being who they are, because there's that gap can be interpreted as worthlessness. You understand? I'm worth nothing, therefore I need to be something for you so I can have more worthiness, right? So all being negates unworthiness. There is no such thing as worth. All right. Unity with the number 3 nullifies competition. And it nullifies the need to have recognition, because it's just complete oneness. All right. Now, I'm saying these are divine relationship, divine awareness. It's a bit transpersonal, because it is impossible in our physical bodies to experience unity. We can get a sense of omnipresence. We can get a sense of omnisentience, but it's still, while we're in our physical bodies, it's impossible to experience that, but we can get a sense or a taste of it. Same with divine awareness. We could channel that into ourselves, okay? What does this, how does this shed more light onto these types for you, looking at the essential qualities in these ways?
Me, it helps, Troy, because it's the first time that I hear you explain it in such detail. Mm-hmm. And like when we do the conflict reconciliation, we at some point end up in one of the essential qualities. And yes, it feels to me now that, or not just feels, it gives my mind a little bit more orientation of how seeing the connection between the essential quality and perhaps the archetype.
Yes.
That was part of the game.
So think of, to be simple, the head types are seeking limitlessness. The relationship types are seeking unconditional connection. Mm-hmm. And the body types are seeking unconditional experience, or the full range of experience, and love, basically unconditional love. When I'm able to realize that I am invulnerable, therefore I can afford to open. I can realize that everything is perfect as it is. Everything is full of life and thriving and growing. Bliss can also be interpreted as joy, faith, devotion, and that a natural benevolence. There's a natural benevolence in life, and the effect is bliss or joy. Okay. Mm-hmm. When I'm experiencing bliss and strength, naturally I'm in unconditional love, and it is not a negotiated love. It's just an emanation and a radiation and an experience of love. All right. Same with unity. When I'm at one, I'm able to be everything and feel everything. When I am in limitless creativity, I also recognize potential in everything, and I can access the wisdom in everything. That's also how those triangles work. And I put it in triangles because if you read by Almas, he talks about the diamond. and or that also the essence of that each of these Enneagram types seek. It's almost like a trinity, or even sometimes like 5 qualities, or 4 or 5, 3, 4 or 5 qualities at once. This is sort of my solution for how I'm saying yes. Each type is like, is the Epicure really seeking limitless wisdom? Well, it's seeking limitlessness, and what's going to come with that is creativity, potential, and wisdom. It's going to get all 3, right? So think of limitlessness, connection, and sort of invulnerable loving experience or love, and then peace. So peace, unity, love, and limitlessness are really the 4 essential qualities to look for, and then these are the variations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so come through the center pillar, and then a variation of its expression. Yeah, and this is mapped onto the tree of life, and I did that on purpose as well. What do you take away in summary then for yourselves on? I know this was supposed to be the Enneagram Simplified, and maybe it went beyond simple. I don't know. But I'm hoping it was a simpler way of looking at it, instead of getting all complex with arrows and pathologies, right? Because sometimes it's presented with all these very distinct pathologies, strategies, strengths, and weaknesses. And I'm trying to say, what's the essence of each archetype, right? And then what is the essence each archetype is going for? What do you take away for yourselves, or in summary, or what stands out for you?
What stood out for me was how you explained kind of the outer perception of the types, but also how you showed and acted out the inner world, you know, the stuff that is somehow intransparent or not seen. That made me very curious and enables me, I think, to be not so judging when I see one of these types in someone else. And like, perhaps before seeing this webinar with you, I would be more on my side thinking, what does it do to me? But I can be a little bit more like, as if there is more grace now in me, in perhaps thinking and seeing what is this person doing to him or herself while doing this.
That's a very good way to put it. There's more grace in you, so that you can then feel less threatened. You can recapture your own resilience, let them be who they are and what they're doing, and then realize they're seeking something. They're aggravated by that gap, and they're seeking something. Then you can move into, it's not how can I help, it's how can I neutralize? How can I calm them back into their resilience a little bit? And it's not about calming them down, but sparking their resilience. And we have other webinars on that. And then address what they're seeking. And if they're aggravated by you, they're probably seeking something in you. And they might be taking it, or stealing it, or sucking it out of you, or imitating it. We don't know. Or resenting you for having it, right? And that's, again, sort of our basis of conflict, is they're always seeking something in the other person, right? And they're either threatened by it, or they're attracted by it. So that's in our other webinars as well. And it's in spades in our courses, module 2 and the conflict course. But yes, I want to underline what you said about having grace. Understand that they are seeking something. So it's not always an attack on you. It's a projection.
Yeah, thank you, Troy, also for adding now that they are either seeking something in me or threatened by something, and vice versa, right? When I am somehow in one of these archetypes and very aggravated too, right? That, yeah, I like to see it again that way.
Think of the threat as, when they feel threatened by you, it's that you possess something they realize they don't have.
Yeah.
So they can get very jealous or angry of it, or try to take it back, or they'll move into the admiration, like, oh, so if you have it, then I can come under your wing, under your umbrella, and feel safe. Or they'll get very angry and resentful and try to take it back, or they're going to say, that's something I can't or do not want. Because if, they're going to push it away because they'll make it taboo. They'll say, yes, I'm so happy I don't possess that because that would destroy me if I did. Therefore, you will destroy me. So there's many different ways to react to these things. But what it's doing is there's something you possess that they do not. They're either seeking it or they're threatened by it. So it can open more compassion with yourself and know that it's not about you. Therefore, you don't have to take it so personally. But check in with yourself. Is there something that you are threatened with? There's a different game, right?
Yes.
And then you can have more compassion to yourself too. Because then your enemy becomes a teacher. Once you regain the foothold and the resilience to listen to the lesson, and then when you can incorporate the lesson, your enemy becomes a teacher. And that's how we start bridging gaps with each other. And that's in other webinars as well. And that's the whole purpose of EED, is to bring people into a state of resilience so that they can get into a state of exchange instead of a state of opposition. That's what we call the dream state, where they become more fluid. Alina, did you have anything in particular you wanted to note?
I think tomorrow when you will put it, okay.
On the recording? Post it, yeah.
I will have another look because there were so many things, so many, and I've been, I don't know, I feel they are very useful, even as a tool. Yeah, exactly. I feel also it's a door to empathy, to empathy to myself and to others.
Yes.
Somehow
Oh, you just muted. Can you unmute? Yeah. Yeah, somehow it...
Yeah, it takes time to actually enter into this way of looking things, and
yes.
I'm trying to educate myself into it.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it takes time. So definitely watch this again and a couple times, because I know it's very dense and it's very rich. Just remember that the Enneagram is much more than a system of personality types or typing a personality. So move away from what's my type. Start to recognize more, where am I coming from? What's the body center? What am I seeking here, right? And how am I seeking it? So you can get to know all 9 types and know that they are archetypal pathways to essence. That's the point. It is not about personality strategies. That's a superficial way. That's the way the business world wants to look at it. That's going to lock you in a box. We have those personality identities or types as a way to express essence. So what's the essence we're coming from? Okay. When we embrace a particular essential quality, it puts that type to peace. It puts it at peace, so to speak. Okay. That's a more spiritual way of looking at it. The Ennea-Types are grouped into the body intelligence zones of head, heart, and gut. Okay. And we borrow from all Ennea-Types depending on our own orientation, whether I'm self-oriented, relationship-oriented, or community-oriented. And at different times of day, different points in our life, we're going to be oriented to all 3, and we use all 3 centers. So therefore, we do use all 9. But I may have a default or a main type that I favor. Okay, it also is linked to what's the main life lesson I'm learning. I'm going to use that type to discover that lesson. So remember that each type seeks a particular quality or an aspect of essence, and it develops particular strengths and pathologies to achieve that. Okay, so a helper and a giver is going to become a master at identifying needs and fulfilling needs. All right, in order to gain that validation. A protector is a master at seeking out who's strong, who's weak, and knowing how to separate that, and knowing how to fight and protect, and knowing how to exercise justice. Okay,
so does that mean, Troy, that there are also strengths associated with it, meaning, right?
Absolutely, yes.
That's what I take out of it.
Yeah, if you embrace your protector, you're going to make peace with your gut, with your ability to control, your ability to make decisions. When you are a protector, you're able to fire somebody gracefully.
So it means once it's connected to source, then we can really use the strength in it in a kind of good and resilient way, right? It's not that we then diss it and don't do it anymore. It's more like we then...
You become at peace with the qualities and strengths that each type is developing. All right. So the Ennea-Type, it can experience all aspects of essence, but it's disowning or it's blind to one particular essential quality. It can experience them all, but like I said, it's going to be that one particular essential quality which contains a life lesson in there. And it might be the last lesson it learns. This is why you might find, oh yeah, I'm okay with being an observer or protector, but like I'm still that perfectionist. Why is that not solved? Because that might be your main type, and there's still the lesson to learn from it, right? Yes. But you can use all the other types to help you discover that final lesson, okay? And yeah, it's to be at peace with the qualities, meaning plug into the resilient self, plug into source, then return to the type and come at it from a resilient perspective or plugged in place. So as we form identity, we form a main type. This might grow and evolve as we change and evolve. So don't get attached to a main type. Yes, my main type is being a perfectionist, but I'm not all that. All right, I'm incorporating all 9. All right, depending on how I'm functioning and what I'm functioning at. So remember, you have a main type, a stress type, security type, wing type, and then other types. So you're usually operating from 4 or 5 types at a time. That means we're operating from and borrowing from 4 or 5 main essential qualities as well. So rather than focusing on what's the type, look at the body center and then the quality that you are seeking. Like I said, if you're saying, oh, I got to stay up all night to finish the project. Well, is that because I want the rewards and accolades, or is it because I want the main quality, or because I don't want to get fired? Okay. So it depends, where am I coming from and what's my drive or main motivation here, okay? I don't want to get fired, that's a head type, right? So maybe it's coming from my loyal skeptic or my observer or my epicure, I don't know. Or I want to get I want to get the recognition and awards, and I'm feeling very competitive with my other colleagues, that's the performer, right? Or I need to be the best because this is really important. I need it to be the best quality presentation for the best quality product because everyone else is taking the easy way out and I need to show them up. That might be the perfectionist, right? So, for example.
Which could turn into excellence, right? When it's plugged in somehow.
Yes, it could be excellence, but then I can have more compassion and I can be able to I can have more, see, the perfectionist needs to learn some acceptance. See, yes, I can push for excellence, but I can also embrace failure as a learning process as opposed to as something that destroys the quality.
Yes.
Right? So every type develops a strength, a degree of intelligence, and uses a degree of creativity in order to seek out and incorporate and experience that essential quality. So, but if they're really aggravated by that gap, they're going to develop negative qualities and vices because that's driven by the fear and the emptiness. So again, like we were saying, plug back into source, plug back into resilience, keep that balance, and then let the type function. All right? Let it function from resilience and take the strengths, okay?
Wow.
If you want to learn more about the Enneagram, look for books by Helen Palmer. She gives you more the personality type aspect and the business application of it. Sandra Maitre looks at more of the spiritual aspect, and Almas also looks at the essential aspect of the Enneagram. And there are other authors as well. And a great book to start with is The Essential Enneagram by David Daniels and Virginia Price. They're basing it a bit from Helen Palmer and drawing a little bit from Almas, but it gives you, it's a nice little book. You can get that on Amazon by Kindle, or we can order it or find it in any bookstore. It's a nice, concise little book that gives you the essence of each type and what they go for. So if you have any other questions, feel free to contact me. We have one more webinar coming up mid-December. It's called The Keys to Thriving. So it's going to be a summary of how EED really works with building resilience and how to activate that resilient self. How do you keep plugging back in? It's going to be a nice summary of that. We're going to restart our courses in the winter, January, February, March. We're going to offer Module 1. So just contact me to pre-register, because I have not opened the registration site yet for 2022. info@essence-dynamics.com, whether you want to come and participate or come and assist if you've taken the courses before. And these are going to be 4-day weekends. Basically 4 days. If you're in Europe, it's going to be from like 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock at night. Or if you're in North America, it would be like from 9 until 2, something like that, if you're in Toronto, where I am at. So, and then there will be a follow-up session. So 4 days of Zoom sessions, 5 hours each, and then a little bit of time, and then a nice practicum after that as a follow-up, so that we'll go back into practicing and exercises. You get 23 CCEs as accredited by the ICF. When you take each of those courses, we have modules 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to put out module 4 in June. Any other questions? Visit the website to get a description of the courses. I do not have descriptions of module 4 yet on the website. I'm going to be doing that over the holidays. Contact me, info@essence-dynamics.com. Check out the YouTube channel at EE Dynamics, or look up Emergent Essence Dynamics. If you're watching on YouTube, then you're already there. Then just hit like and subscribe and put in your comments on how you enjoyed this video. Otherwise, go enjoy exploring your main body centers. Go discover how you are embodying all 9 types at all times, or at any time in the day. Discover what's maybe the main type you're gravitating towards, but be gentle with yourself. Don't drive yourself to be in a rush to say, this is my type, this is your type. Be more fluid. And always feel free to contact me if you have more questions. I'm always open to hearing from you. And in the meantime, keep radiant, keep brilliant, keep resilient, and most of all, enjoy.